My name is Joseph Krolikowski, and I am the Technical Director of Johnson Registrars. Couple of notes for everybody. All participants are on mute, but we definitely want to take your questions today. So please use the question portion of the dashboard, and we will address your questions at the conclusion of our presentation. Our topics for today, we're going to review the transition process and go over how it will be handled. We'll have a discussion on the projected amount of additional audit time that will be needed. We're going to have an in-depth review of the anticipated new audit content, and a summary of how an audit to ISO 9001:2015 is going to feel different from what you're currently going through for ISO 9001:2008, and also some notes on how it will feel very similar, some concluding remarks, and then your questions. Now, PJR is planning to offer three potential approaches that you can use to complete your transition. Now, we are very much aware that our clients have different needs in terms of when the transition takes place, and we also recognize that the timing is going to, of course, be a question for each of you. Can you do it during a recertification? Will you need to do it over surveillance and so forth? So we've pretty much opened all options and wanted to be as flexible as possible to our client base. So the three basic options are as follows. You can transition as part of your recertification audit. Now, this is obviously the ideal approach. The recertification audit already includes additional audit time, and it already obviously comes with an issuance of a new certificate. However, if you need to do it as part of a surveillance audit, we can accommodate you here as well. You can transition as part of an annual surveillance audit. This approach will result in a small amount of additional audit time. That's going to vary from case to case. Additionally, you can transition as part of two consecutive semi-annual surveillance audits. Now, our preferred approach would be that you complete your transition in one step, whether that is a semi-annual surveillance or annual surveillance. But we recognize for some of our clients that's not an ideal option, so we will permit the additional time to be split into two audits as long as they are consecutive. Now, in both cases where this is done on a surveillance audit, you will get a revised certificate representing a revision to the existing ISO 9001:2008 certificate. Let's have a look at how that will be done. So let's say that you had a certificate to ISO 9001:2008 that was issued in January 2016 following a recertification or stage 2 audit. So we've applied a dummy cert number here, C2016-12345, issued January 15th, 2016, and expiring September 14th, 2018. Now this, of course, is the mandatory cutoff date that's been established by the ISO for any ISO 9001:2008 certifications. After that date, any certificates to 9001:2008 will no longer be valid ISO 9001 certificates. So in this case, if the organization completes a successful transition in early 2018, they would get a revised certificate. And you'll note the certificate number is the same. It has a -R1, revision 1. The issue date is the same, but now you'll note that the expiration date is January 14th, 2019. Now the certificate has a full 3-year period. So that would be, again, in the case of an organization choosing to transition as part of a surveillance audit. Now, in terms of the additional amount of time that's going to be needed, we have a special grid that has been developed for calculating additional audit time. The full measure of that grid is confidential, but we can definitely share some critical information. For most of the average size companies, if they choose to do a transition over a surveillance audit, it's going to require an additional half day or 4 hours of audit time. Now, some of our clients are going to be able to transition with no added audit time at all. Now, we have prepared a special client memorandum on this. I would encourage you to reach out to either your scheduler or your sales representative, and they can provide you with a copy of this memo that goes into some more detail. In terms of anticipated new audit content, we have prepared a preliminary list of key new items that are going to require verification during the transition audit, and we're going to be going over these on the next several slides. Now, the majority of new audit content is found in sections 4, 5, and 6. There are smatterings of new content in the other sections, but the primary items are in 4, 5, and 6. Section 4 has a couple of really interesting high-level items that are new in terms of terminology and the overall idea. And those begin right at the top in Section 4.1. Has the organization implemented a process to determine, monitor, and review external and internal issues relevant to purpose and strategic direction? Now, we're going to table a discussion on strategic direction for just a few slides here, but let's emphasize this whole idea of external and internal issues. This is some very broad terminology that's being used here, and it serves a particular purpose. And that purpose is that as an organization, as a quality system, it is intended that you be cognizant of the issues that affect you and affect your ability to do what it is you need to do. And these are going to come from both external sources, things that are brought up by customers, changes in your industry, and so forth, and internal issues, new equipment that you've acquired, changes in processes, and so forth. The overall purpose of the standard really is kind of being addressed here. Can you do what you need to do to identify and react to both external and internal issues that have an effect on your purpose and your strategic direction as an organization? Now, 4.1 is coupled really with the clause that follows in 4.2. So let's pull that up. I've got this split into two slides. Let's review both slides, and then we'll have some discussion on the intent here. Has the organization determined who its interested parties are? Okay, so hang on to that thought. And then over here, has the organization established a process to monitor and review information about interested parties and identify what their requirements are? So interested parties is it's a term that is used in Annex SL, which of course is the framework that ISO 9001 is built in. And what interested parties is intended to do, it's intended to be a very broad term. And again, the larger idea here is that interested parties are going to fall into external and internal camps. Now, if you think about the older versions of ISO 9001, there was a lot of emphasis on the needs of customers and reacting to things from the customers and involving customers in certain decisions and so forth. Customers are as important as they ever were. That has not changed. But this term, interested parties, is intended to broaden the scope of who we would consider as applicable and who we would consider as a contributor, really, to those internal and external issues. So in addition to customers, we would also look at suppliers. We would also look at the ownership of the organization. In the explanatory portion of ISO 9001, it even talks about unions and bankers and competitors and so forth. And do these parties have an influence in the organization and in the quality system? Now, 4.2, for its part, it does emphasize the fact that it's up to the organization to ascertain who's relevant. That term is used. Who are the relevant interested parties? So it is at your discretion as to who plays a relevant role in your quality system. Now, in terms of how this is going to be audited, our expectation is not so much that you've put a formal list together, not so much that you have gone to all kinds of great lengths to document who your interested parties are, but rather that you are speaking with one voice in terms of what are the internal, external issues, who are the relevant interested parties. Now, I will mention as an add-on to this that both of these items, internal, external issues, internal and external interested parties, both of these show up later in management review. So at a minimum, we would expect to see some discussion of those ideas in that space. But for now, just bear in mind, as an organization, you need to have understanding of these terms. You need to be able to explain consistently what the relevant interested parties are for your organization and how you have a handle on relevant internal and external issues. Interesting change in 4.3. Is the scope statement appropriate? Does it take into account those internal and external issues, interested party requirements, and the products and services of the organization? The scope statement, of course, is the defining of what your organization is all about and what it is that you do. Now, we have adjusted our audit report specifically to direct our auditors to assess the adequacy of your scope statement. I would presume that for most organizations, your scope is well defined and meets criteria. 4.3 also introduces the idea of non-applicable clauses and states that you can claim exemption for any requirement of the standard, not just those related to product realization. This is, of course, a little bit of a change from the permissible exclusions requirement as it appeared in ISO 9001-2008, but the approach is the same. We have always approached exclusions or exemptions within our audit report. Our expectation is that your method of establishing these exemptions will likely not have to change. And for the most part, the exemptions that will be permitted will be mostly coming from Section 8 and in a few cases coming from Section 7. Transitioning then to Section 5, has management demonstrated that it has taken accountability of the effectiveness of the quality management system? This is one of a couple of items that's raised in Section 5.1.1. And this is, I think, a very important uh, piece of verbiage in the new standard. It really raises the idea that a quality management system is not something to be dumped in one person's lap. And that's one of the key new ideas in this standard, is that the organization and the leadership of the organization as a whole is responsible for the effectiveness of the quality system. That definitely is brought out by this clause here. Now, in terms of how we're going to audit this, we are going to be reviewing things like management review, corrective action, and so forth, and verifying that leadership is involved and participates in those activities. Additionally, and this will be reinforced later in my presentation, we have amended our audit report just a bit to show that we've had a group interview with the leadership team, and there's been some directed questions to the leadership group. So another new item in the audit process. Continuing on in 511, has management assured that the quality policy and objectives are compatible with the strategic direction of the company? I did promise earlier we would review the term strategic direction, and here is where we will do so. Now, strategic direction is a term that's used in a few places in ISO 9001, but it is not a term that has been officially defined. It's not defined in 9001, and it's not defined in the ISO 9000 standard either. It is possible that we will get a sanctioned interpretation of that term later, but at the moment what we have is a general consensus. And that is that strategic direction refers to an organization's vision of where they want to be in the future. You know, the whole idea of a quality system, one of the cornerstone ideas really, is continual improvement. Well, what is it that you're improving for? Why are you doing what it is that you're doing? You know, for some companies, they think of this as their mission. They think of this as their vision. And the idea is that your quality system, and in particular the goals associated with the quality system, should contribute in a positive way to the achievement of your larger mission. And so how would we assess this? How would we go about reviewing this? Well, again, we would be looking at management review minutes, possibly business plan minutes. We would be interviewing the leadership team, looking at operational memos, and just seeing, is there a larger purpose at play here? Is there a larger strategic direction that is being strived for, really, by the actions of this system and by the goals that have been established for it? 511 also has a subclause that asks, has management assured that the quality management system requirements have been integrated into business processes? Now, this was kind of an interesting change, and you know, in the past, we've always approached accounting and things related to accounting as kind of hands-off, right? You know, you don't go into the accounting office, you don't interview those folks. Now, I think the larger intent here is that are we going to be digging into your books? No, not so much. But we are going to look to see that some of the, what you might call, best practices associated with the quality system have been integrated company-wide, right? So what might that include? Well, if you think about document revision control, right? Making sure that the correct versions of documents are available at points of use. Well, that's a good practice. That's a quality system practice that could benefit something like accounting. Record retention. having a system in place to retrieve records. Well, that makes sense no matter what part of the company you're looking at. And competency requirements, the whole idea that persons that fill various roles within the organization, that their competency has been assured. These are all good practices to have, and the intent of this clause is to ensure that they have been integrated into what we would refer to as business processes. Continuing on with Clause 5.2, we've got a little bit of a change to quality policy. Have you ensured that your quality policy is available to all relevant interested parties? Now again, we have to remember that interested parties refers to both internal and external interested parties. So how would we go about this, right? Does this mean we have to mail it to all of our customers, or what constitutes availability? Well, we have taken kind of an open-minded view on this, and we've said, look, if you've made it generally available, that counts. So posting your quality policy in your front entryway, having it reflected on your website, putting it on product packaging, all of these things constitute making it generally available. The intent here is that your quality policy, again, is part of the larger reflection of your strategic direction, and this is something that you want to broadcast and make available to the internal and to the external interested parties. Has top management taken on the responsibility for managing the quality system? Now, this particular item is rather interesting. They've eliminated the term management representative from the standard, and there's been quite a bit of consternation about this, and we've confirmed a couple of key things here in our understanding of this requirement. First of all, the expectation is that the leadership team has to be responsible. They have to make themselves accountable for the success or failure of the quality management system. They have to ensure that the responsibilities are assigned for the quality management system. By virtue of the fact that the management representative term has been removed from the standard, the intent is that, as I mentioned earlier, we're not going to be dumping this in one person's lap. That again, you want to hone in on the idea of accountability. Now that said, this does not mean that an organization cannot designate a key contact. The organization is certainly free to designate a key contact. The organization can absolutely state that, okay, this person is the person that answers the phone when the auditors call. This is the person that welcomes the auditors when they come to do the audit. This is the person that calls the management review meeting to order. This is the person that maintains the corrective action database. But in digging into those pieces, we want to make sure that leadership is, as a team, leadership is running the system. They're the ones calling the shots. They're the ones making the tough calls and so forth. So again, we can absolutely have kind of a coordinator, if you will, a key contact, if you will, but this person cannot shoulder the responsibility for the system 100% on their own. Has top management established a means to monitor if processes are delivering intended outputs? Now we've already made a lot of effort into reviewing KPIs and objectives. We have a large section within our audit report that is provided for this. Now, that's still going to be utilized. And I think this terminology, it's a little bit of a change, but it's not a dramatic change. So you should already have metrics in place for your processes. You should already know, are my processes achieving and delivering the intended outputs. Turning our attention then to Section 6. Section 6, of course, is the place where we find the most direct verbiage pertaining to the topic risk. And I know risk is, for a lot of the folks that are new to the standard, it's kind of a scary topic. There's a lot to consider here. But there are a couple of key items that are written into the standard itself that we need to be cognizant of in terms of how it will be approached. And the first of these is, have you developed a process for this to determine what your risks are? However, if you dig into Annex A, which is one of the explanatory sections within the standard, it states that you do not have to have a formal process for risk management. And that's key. You don't have to have a standalone risk management process. The expectation is that as an organization, you understand the requirement and you are prepared to explain how it has been integrated into your quality system. Now, there's a lot of things that we have in ISO 9001-2008 that can play a role in fulfilling this requirement. So what are some of these things? Management review, right? We review our system, we target improvement efforts, and so forth. Preventive action, probably the most obvious and direct correlating requirement to risk management and risk-based thinking. Planning meetings, and so forth. We have added a question to our audit report specifically for this. And what we've directed our auditors to do is to ask the organization, what have you established for risk management, for risk-based thinking? How is it integrated into your quality system? And then to take a very open-minded approach in what the organization presents you. Because, again, the field is wide open on what's acceptable here. The guidance documentation, of which there's relatively little. There's Annex A within the standard itself, and then there's the official definitions of risk as found in ISO 9000. But these things taken together all paint a fairly broad picture, and that is that there's a lot of acceptable ways to go about this requirement, and auditors and certification bodies need to maintain an open mind. 612 states that, do we have a process in place to address those identified risks? And the way that the requirement is written, it talks about integrating your risk aversion activities into your existing processes. It really hammers home the idea that this is something that is intended to be a part of your existing processes and not a standalone process on its own. Turning our attention then to quality objectives, these are discussed in subsection 6.2. Interesting item here, are quality objectives relevant to the conformity of products, and do they enhance customer satisfaction? Now, again, our auditing methods for this are not going to change. We are still going to have our portion of the audit report for this. This is still very likely going to be an item that will come up early in the audit process. But interestingly, the focus of what effect of quality objectives is going to change just a bit. Now, I would say that for the majority, the vast majority of our clients, this has already been fulfilled. The average company when they formulate their objectives, when they formulate their metrics, they're doing so with this in mind, right? Satisfaction of customers and conformity of products. Now, having said that, there are other companies that, for example, might develop safety objectives. There are companies that might develop financial objectives. We've certainly seen that in the past. If you are that sort of company, what I say is you can absolutely continue to maintain those items as objectives within your organization, but be certain that there are other objectives that more directly address conformity of products and enhancement of customer satisfaction. Additionally, under quality objectives, some refining of the requirement. Have the objectives been analyzed? Assign the resources, identify the responsible parties, establish a timeline, and determine the methods of evaluation. Now, again, our method of assessing this is going to be virtually the same. And for most organizations, this is already in place. This is part and parcel of an effective method for quality objectives. It's been formalized a bit within the standard now. Okay, turning our attention then to Section 7. Has the organization established a process to ensure that organizational knowledge is maintained and made available? Now, organizational knowledge is kind of an interesting idea, a new idea to be sure. And there's a couple of aspects to this particular requirement. First of all, organizational knowledge is generally understood as knowledge specific to the organization gained through experience. It's another term that does not have a real firm definition within the standard. There is an auditing practices memorandum that's been issued by the IEC. But in general, the idea with organizational knowledge is you have people that work within your organization that acquire a skill set through their experience, and they have a certain knowledge that is potentially irreplaceable if that person is lost. Now, what can we do to retain this organizational knowledge? Can we develop better training methods? Can we improve our work instructions, our production controls? Can we enhance our quality controls? These are all things that we can point to as strategies for organizational knowledge. Now, additionally, the requirement is also, do we learn from past mistakes? Do we improve our processes when there is an issue that comes up? Now, that might come to bear in corrective action, for example, in production planning, in the methods that we use for competency. Now, the other aspect of organizational knowledge is, have we established a process to assess existing competencies against changing needs and trends? Now, again, the idea here is competency now is obviously important, but competency for what's coming is also important. Are we ready for what's down the road, right? For what's coming? So it's critical that we are prepared for those challenges. And this is, of course, another form of risk management. So again, we assess this through existing methods. We look at competency as a portion of the audit, but this organizational knowledge requirement, I think, is going to have some intriguing impacts on our assessments of this area. Turning our attention then to Section 8, there's a couple of new items that pertain to product design. If the organization is responsible for the design of its products, Do those inputs include standards and or codes of practice that the organization has committed to implement? And that comes from section 833D. Now I'm actually going to jump ahead a slide and pair this with the other additional input requirement, and that is, if the organization is responsible for design of product, does the design input include consideration of potential consequences of failure due to the nature of products or services? So we have standards and codes of practice and potential consequences of failure. Now, in terms of our assessment methods for these, unchanged. We have long since established the right approach to review design activities. For the most part, it includes interviewing design personnel and then pulling project records and reviewing inputs and outputs and so forth. Now, these two new items here, the standards and codes and practices and the potential consequences of failure, these are definitely going to be dependent on what type of product design work you're doing. If you are designing, for example, an end-user product, there's going to be more potential impact from these requirements than if you are designing a single piece of a much larger picture, a much larger design. Obviously, we're going to take these on a case-by-case basis. One of the items that's been mentioned, for example, in consequences of failure would be safety, financial fallout, and so forth. So these are obviously expansions of existing ideas. Looking at section 8.4, has the organization established a method to communicate their intentions in control and monitoring of external provider performance to external providers? Are you making external providers aware of how you are monitoring them? Now, the existing methods for communicating with your external providers can absolutely be brought to bear here, right? Things in the purchase orders, things in contracts, statements on your websites, and so forth. These are all perfectly acceptable means for communicating this information. Eight 8.5.3 has an interesting new item. Have controls been established for external provider property where ownership does not transfer to the organization? And this requirement is an expansion of a requirement referred to as customer property within ISO 9001 2008. And it was decided that, you know, there are situations where we get external provider property as well. And what might an example of that be? Well, let's say, for example, that you want to put a powder coating facility on your property. You want to integrate powder coating into what you do. And because of the cost involved, you opt to lease a powder coating booth from a supplier. And they come and set it up at your facility and keep you stocked with raw materials and so forth. But technically, that powder coating booth belongs to your supplier. That would be a situation where this requirement would apply. And so what would we do with this as auditors? Well, we would be looking at the arrangement that's been made between yourself and that supplier, whether that be purchase order terms or contracts and so forth, and just verifying that you have a method of communicating to your supplier when some aspect of this isn't going quite right. Now, for obvious reasons, it is probable that this clause will be of limited applicability in most cases. have controls for the expanded list of applicable post-delivery activities been established? Now again, this is going to be heavily dependent on whether or not the post-delivery activities apply to you. Now this is not exclusively limited to what we might refer to as aftermarket warranty type activity, but there are some potential items in the standard that would fall under this requirement, and some things that need to be considered. If you look at 855, it talks about, for example, are there statutory and regulatory requirements? Are there customer requirements? Do you have a process in place for customer feedback? Now obviously this isn't the only area where customer feedback falls in, but it does come up. Now I do want to point out, in 855 there's a note, and the note states that post-delivery activities can include, does not mean that this is exclusively this, but it can include things like warranty, maintenance, and supplementary services such as recycling or final disposal. Have you determined a process for responding to unplanned changes in such a way that conformity with specified requirements is maintained? Now, for most organizations, an unplanned change is equivocated with a problem, right? And when that happens, most often we would have a corrective action, perhaps an internal problem report, things of this nature. But the expectation is that you have a process in place to respond to changes when they occur, and make sure that you can continue to maintain specified requirements. 856 also states that you will have a method for retaining documented information, now that's ISO speak for keeping records, about changes, including who authorized the change and actions arising from the change. One potential method for this, in addition to corrective action, could be your management review meeting process. In terms of how we will approach this as auditors, we will inquire, we will look to see what have you put in place in terms of addressing changes. How have you incorporated this into your quality system? Turning our attention then to Section 9, just a couple of additional requirements. Section 9, of course, is the new placeholder for the management review requirement. And there's actually 3 new subclauses that include content that needs to be included within the management review meeting. These begin with 932B, where it states that the management review process has to include discussion of external and internal changes, including the effect on your strategic direction. Management review also has to include discussion of external provider performance. And finally, management review has to include an assessment of management activities. Now, all of these items taken together can all be addressed through existing management review methodologies. If you are in the habit of having a single annual management review meeting with PowerPoint slides and typed minutes, you can absolutely keep doing that as long as this additional content is included. If you are the sort of company that has one meeting a month and you cover a couple topics at a time, that methodology is absolutely acceptable as well. Whatever it is you're doing, just be sure that you have added these new requirements. Our methods for assessing the management review process will be unchanged. It is still a portion of our audit report. That's actually the very last of the additional requirements, the new requirements represented by ISO 9001-2015. Let's take a couple of minutes now and review in general how the audit to 9001-2015 is going to differ from an assessment to ISO 9001-2008. We have concluded that for most companies, the difference in the audit process is going to be minimal and manageable. The key differences are as follows. Obviously, the expanded role of leadership is critical. The impact of risk-based thinking requirements is prevalent, and the elimination of previously required documentation. Let's go over each of these in turn. The 9001-2015 audit is going to include an extensive discussion with leadership. We have, as I mentioned earlier, added a special section to our audit report called Leadership Interview, and it directs our auditors to ensure that the leadership team is assembled and interviewed as a portion of the audit. We're projecting that this is going to be anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes out of every audit to sit down with the leadership team to go over the critical questions of the quality system. Additionally, we have directed our auditors to ensure that leadership is directly involved in the management of the system. So in the past, the leadership team may have been only lightly involved in the audit process, there for the opening meeting, there for the closing meeting, available at points in between but not really interviewed. That is going to change. Leadership can absolutely expect to be involved in the audit process at minimum for this part of our assessment. We have a special portion of the audit report that's going to target our review of risk management, risk-based thinking. We've emphasized this a number of times that ISO 9001-2015 does not include a formal requirement for risk management. We have directed our auditors to ask about it and to be prepared to examine what is presented by the auditee. We are presuming that for a lot of companies, things that were present in 9001-2008 will be brought to bear. We've mentioned some of this already, things like preventive action, management review, competency planning, and so forth. But again, we're going into our assessment of this requirement with a very open mind. No more preconceived expectations for documentation. It's been discussed a number of times over that ISO 9001-2015 has washed away the last of the lingering requirements for procedures. And they've also eliminated the requirement for a quality manual. What this means is that the auditors cannot demand a procedure for any particular activity. You are free as an organization to decide for yourself what it means to have control over your processes, whatever shape that takes in terms of the approach. Now that said, if you choose to have a procedure for any particular topic, please be aware that the content of that procedure is still admissible as audit criteria. So if you have a procedure, for example, for management review that says you will have a management review every month, we will hold you accountable to that, even though the standard does not specify a minimum frequency. Now, another item that I want to point out to you, there's a couple of ideas that are being brought in by the 17021 standard, the 2015 version. This is the standard, of course, that PJR is held accountable to as an accredited registrar. We are now directing our auditors to review your process for identifying statutory and regulatory requirements, and we've actually incorporated a special section of our audit report to record the results of those reviews. Now, some of the early requirements that we've identified in our assessments have included OSHA type requirements for personal protective equipment? Do you post your applicable statutory and regulatory requirements? Do you have a process for identifying applicable statutory and regulatory requirements, and so forth? Statutory and regulatory requirements have been a part of the quality system for some time, but they are now being brought to the forefront by the 17021 standard. They want to see that we are assessing these items appropriately within our audit process. Now, additionally, our auditors are being specifically directed to comment on the level of adherence to the IAF expected outcomes publication. And I've got some details on that on our next slide here. Now, the expected outcomes, this was published by the International Accreditation Forum, or IAF, back in 2012. Now, this is a series of key ideas that pertain to the larger picture of what a quality management system should mean for the organization that implements it. I've actually provided the URL here that you can use to visit the IAF and read the expected outcomes publication for yourself. The expected outcomes publication focuses on 9 key ideas. What is a quality system all about? Well, a quality system should ensure it should be suitable for its processes and products. It should ensure an analysis and understanding of customer needs and expectations. It should assure specificity of product characteristics in order to meet applicable requirements. It should ensure that there is a management of processes to achieve expected outcomes. It should ensure that resources are available. It should ensure that there is monitoring and control of product characteristics. It should ensure a prevention of nonconformance and that appropriate actions are taken when nonconformance occurs. It should ensure an effective process for internal audit and management review. And overall, it should ensure monitoring, measuring, and continual improvement of the quality management system. Now, as you're probably recognizing, these are all ideas that are flowed into the standard itself. These are all things that are discussed within the standard itself. If you have successfully implemented ISO 9001, you have met these expected outcomes by default. Now, in terms of how an audit to ISO 9001:2015 will be the same, the key aspect of these audits is the same as it was under ISO 9001:2008, and that is that we are auditing your processes. The ISO 9001 standard has been about process auditing for a long time now. Element-based audits have been obsolete for over 15 years, and PJR completed its transition to process-based auditing over 13 years ago. We will audit you as you say you are, and that is by way of your processes. We still observe what you do. We still review your documented information. We still interview the members of your organization. We still learn about what your processes are, and we still sample information from those processes. You're still expected to demonstrate that the requirements of the 9001 standard have been addressed through the processes that have been established. In conclusion, PJR is ready to ensure that your organization experiences a smooth transition to ISO 9001:2015. We are confident that for the majority of our clients, this transition will proceed with minimal difference from past assessments, and that the new standard will bring with it a host of benefits for our clients. I would like to invite you to tune in for one of our other webinars. We have ISO 9001:2015, Preparing for a Successful Transition. It's also delivered on a once-monthly basis. It's an overview of the development of the ISO 9001:2015 standard, a review on the timeline, a review of the format and layout of the standard, and answers some common questions that have been raised. We also have the interaction of processes and its importance to a successful audit, It's an exploration of the critical topic of processes and how to correctly understand them. New webinar under development at this time, what to expect during your Stage 1 audit. We're hoping to be premiering that webinar sometime in June. We do want to keep in touch with our clients and potential clients. If you would like to be kept informed of the latest news automatically, I do invite you to opt in for future updates by visiting our website at www.pjr.com. If you go to the bottom of the home page, enter your email address and click subscribe, you will be kept automatically informed of news, pending webinars, and other points of interest. I do thank you for your time, and I'm going to unlock the question panel and see if we have any questions today. We do have a couple of questions on the PowerPoint slides and so forth. We will absolutely be making the slides available following the presentation. If you give us just a little bit of time, we will be posting a link for downloading the slides. The webinar will actually also be available for reviewing under previously given webinars on our website. Again, give us just a little bit of time for that as well. Any other questions I can answer today? Okay, well, I do want to thank everyone for your attention and have a great day. Thank you.